Good morning and welcome to this Free Friday webinar. My name is Michelle Mott of Inspiring Solutions. I say a company that's been delivering on-site but now online talent development for almost 30 years. Today we're going to explore some visionary leadership strategies that you can use beyond COVID-19. And I want to thank Dana in advance. She is our producer. If you have any technical difficulties, her number is listed there on the slide, 515-208-4393. As I mentioned, we have been providing organizational development and talent development in the areas of strategic planning, leadership development, and employee engagement. And more recently, we have been doing it online. The purpose of these webinars has allowed us to provide you with some monthly motivation. Some of you have been loyal fans, and we appreciate you for each time you've joined us. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. We hope that it's an inspiring hour for you. And we want to expose you to one of our programs. In fact, this particular month, we are exposing you to two different programs. We felt it was so important to help you with this COVID-19 application in your business. We aligned it with what we already had scheduled for visionary strategies, but they really worked nicely together. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the lessons that you've learned through the pandemic and introduce you to a tool called Everything Disc Work of Leaders, and explore how as a leader you need to create a recovery plan, especially in times of great change and uncertainty, with trust and alignment around the plan, and execute the plan to establish whatever this new normal might be. In the email that Dana sent to you, there were 3 separate attachments. One had a sample of the Everything Disc Work of Leaders profile, which we'll walk through. There was also a handout that had the program descriptions and some handouts, along with our upcoming webinar flyers for you to join us and even invite others. When you leave out of the webinar experience, please take a little time, maybe 2-3 minutes to answer a couple questions. This gives us feedback as to how you enjoy this experience. We're trying to figure out if the 30-minute, 45-minute, or 1-hour time frame works best, because we've had various feedback, so we're still kind of refining that, but your feedback would be very helpful. We have done a number of different Zoom meetings and webinars, as you probably have as well, and we don't want you today to be a Zoom zombie. We want you to participate, take notes for your own reference, ask questions, whether you can do it by unmuting yourself or whether you want to use the chat box to do so. Dana's going to be watching the chat feature and chime in on any questions that or answers to my questions. Share best practices, because we've learned that all of you are kind of creating your own best practices, and so regardless of the industry, we want to learn from you. Think creatively, engage in our discussions, and most importantly, because it's Friday, have fun. It's hard to believe 3 months ago our world was disrupted. We call it the POW. Without much warning, we were impacted both professionally and personally. Some of you may have been deployed. Maybe some of you have kids now home since the spring break. And that oftentimes can feel like entering a body of water. I used to be a lifeguard, and this image also looked like the pool that I was a lifeguard in. And we always get a kick out of people would enter the water. Some would go in slowly, like this polar bear plunge in Clear Lake, Iowa, where these crazy folks in the middle of winter go running out into the deep end, grinning and bearing as you go through. It's shallow. Or you can just truly jump right in. And that's really kind of how it felt with COVID-19. We didn't have much choice. We all initially plunged all in. And you could have a variety of different reactions, maybe like this guy, kind of losing your breath. And we'd hope as a result of this experience to leave you, or at least give you, the wow factor. And that's some of the exercises intentions today. There was a lot of creative disruption. Your people were affected, and people can be employees. Maybe you were a manager of a team that had to learn how to work and communicate virtually. Maybe you're still working virtually. You had to communicate with your customers differently. You had to change practices. Policies had to be revised because they didn't work in this new virtual world. Procedures. I know Dana and I had to figure out how we were both going to work. Luckily, we had already done some things before COVID-19, which allowed her to work remotely. And luckily we had done that. We migrated all our files to Office 365, and that allowed us to continue to share documents and communicate all of this virtual world that we now live in. Our approach to COVID-19 was as if the plane was taking off and we were building it on the runway. And it still feels that way in many ways. There was no playbook, there was no checklist, there were no best practices that we could use because everyone was in the same situation. I think we were all in the same storm. COVID-19 was all affecting everyone, and so I think to a degree, somewhat of comfort could be felt like that. However, we were in a different ship, different boats, navigating through the storm. I think there has also been some silver lining. I have experienced some new technology, as you probably have as well. We had a group that oftentimes got together each month to celebrate birthdays, and instead we did it virtually. So we first started off with Facebook Messenger, and then we learned that we couldn't have, I think, 8 people on it. So we migrated to Zoom. And then the last I think we did, we even used a house party because somebody introduced us to that. So that's been fun. I've actually been using that with my granddaughter, kind of our last thing to do before we go to bed at night. Professionally Inspiring Solutions has developed a number of new programs and delivery systems. When I look back, we had been offering webinars since 2012. We had started using, I think, WebEx, GoToMeetings, GoToWebinars. More recently, we migrated to Zoom because we just found it was the easiest, not only for us to use, but we found that our users, our learners, you guys, were much more familiar with Zoom. Dana has been consistently recording our webinars. So now we have a whole library of pre-recorded webinars. So if you're interested, go out to our website, inspiringsolutions.com. You've got some extra time and you can look at some of our topics on customer service, attitudes, team building, leadership development. But since March 16th, we have created 3 new programs that can help the virtual workplace. We've established several new and repeat contracts. I think the value of online learning has increased, and we now have a new fee structure where before we're offering our webinars complimentary. Well, we do this one complimentary, but now clients have realized that the workplace is going to be working virtually at least for a little bit longer, and who knows beyond that. And so we've got to learn how to figure out communication, talent development. We'd like to have you think about what's been your lemon to lemonade story. And in a program called Powwow, we would move you into a breakout. Whether we do it virtually, we can do that. We can move you and you'd accept it. Leaders would be involved in facilitating the discussion. Maybe some of you have participated in an experience like this. Everyone is encouraged to participate because it gets everybody involved. Because I do think with Zoom communication, we're going to have some ground rules. And this is an example of using ground rules to make sure that everybody doesn't go stealth on you. We are doing it a little bit differently with this month's webinar, but when we facilitate this powwow, everyone is expected to communicate in some fashion. So what we'd like to do today, in whatever fashion you can, if you want to type in the chat box your answer, or if you want to unmute yourself, we'd love for you to share with us, what have you enjoyed most about the pandemic experience, at work or at home? I'll start, then I'll ask Dana to start, and then any of you that are typing in, she'll read, or if we want you to actually unmute yourself. I probably have enjoyed learning new technology. My first degree was in computer science, and so I am kind of a geek at heart. So I really have enjoyed learning some new technology. Zoom, we've gotten some new platforms for presenting with Zoom. So that's probably professionally what I've learned. And personally, I've just enjoyed more intentional communication with my family and my friends. Dana?
I have enjoyed working at home, and just, I think you and I have worked better together, as I think you said before, and looking at my deck and flowers grow.
Yes, that was a big project.
It was.
Great. So let's hear from others. You want to unmute yourself?
Amy said, being able to move my office outside when my physical office had no windows. Yes, I've worked on my deck as well many times. Love it.
Great.
Haley said, I have enjoyed starting my new container garden project and still maintaining my cacti and succulent collection. Oh, that's cool.
Nice. Let's have more.
This is Teresa. I've enjoyed the more relaxed atmosphere, just being at home rather than in the office. But I do miss the socialization with the office staff.
I agree. Yeah, Teresa, you said that, it made me think, my dry cleaning bill is non-existent. So it's a whole new wardrobe now.
That's true.
Yeah, and we've saved on gas because we haven't had to commute. So there's been all kinds of benefits to this. So thank you guys for sharing. Well, if you want to turn to the handout that has the title page, Strategic Learning, Leadership Strategies, one of the pages has a handout that has 19 great questions to get your business unstuck. And it was taken out of a book of a colleague, David Newman, wrote, called Do It Marketing, 77 Instant Action Ideas to Boost Sales, Maximize Profits, and Crush Your Competition. And so I would encourage you to consider asking yourself, asking your team, any one of these questions to really process learning. What did we gain from this experience? What should we do more of or less of? Number 6, where are we hitting it out of the park? In other words, what have you done that maybe no other one in your community or in your industry has done? Number 11, how can we do better in generating leads? Inspiring Solutions used to present at conferences. It was very common for us. In fact, our calendar was filled with opportunities to not only work on site with clients, but we'd speak at conferences because that's where we had a chance to kind of showcase and gain new clients. And since conferences have pretty much vanished until, I think most of them probably are not going to go on site until 2021. We have participated virtually in a couple of conferences, but we have also realized now the value of the webinars, because that's, again, a way that we can expose clients as well as prospective clients to our work. So use that as a handout to help you and your teams get unstuck. Now, the exercise that we have created, the powwow, is on the next page. On this page are 2 columns, and we're going to have you think about this. On the first column, we want you to think about what changes have you made, and this is work related, and it could be that you made yourself in doing your job. It could be a change that maybe your team or your department did, Or you could look at it from an organizational perspective. Or it could be a lesson that you learned. So what may be something that you now need to do differently? I'm about to start traveling commercially again, and so I am comfortable wearing masks. I feel, however, I probably will be wearing my glasses so that I have a little more eye protection, and I'll probably be wearing gloves just to be a little bit more cautious. And then the second column is what might be a new best practice. And so I will say, from an Inspiring Solutions perspective, I think that we now are committed to beefing up our promoting online learning as a way in which of delivering. So where before it was more of a marketing, we're going to say now that delivering on-site and online talent development might be equally important. So what I'm going to give you time now to do is, if you would, either type in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, Teresa, you did great. If you want to unmute yourself and tell us something that you have learned or done differently that might remain as a best practice, regardless of your industry. And Dana, if you want to chime in from your perspective as well.
I've learned a lot about technology. I think you mentioned that, and Zoom and learning about that. So that's been fun. And getting everybody else involved.
Yeah, a new way of getting people involved. Zoom communication or online communication. We were talking about how nonverbal communication is more important ever than before.
And I know a lot of people are working, they feel like they're working longer hours because they're working from home. So, I mean, that's something new that people are learning, is how to work from home and to mix being at home and around kids and other distractions, along with getting responsibilities done for work. Let's see.
Right.
Said, from a technology perspective, I've had to make more use of technology and in best practice, get more staff to understand the importance of technology in business.
Thanks, Haley.
And Amy said, digitizing processes, as we had a habit of printing a lot in the office, but have found in our working from home experience that we don't need all that paper to do our jobs. Michelle, does that sound familiar?
It certainly does, Ollie.
Paperless would be a dream, says Haley.
Yeah, no, I think that has been something that we've strived to do. But now, I'm going to commend Dana for helping me do this. I'm actually working in Colorado, as I mentioned, as you guys were coming on. And I don't have any handouts right now, so I'm paperless. I can do it. But
Yeah.
the idea of having it. So thank you all for having that exercise, at least to give you an idea of that. So the next page would then be, if you did this with your team, there might be some things that come as a result of your learning best practices that need to have a little more work to it. So the next page says, okay, what might need to be done as a way of helping you refocus, reignite, refine policies or revise policies and procedures. So that's a great way to help people not only learn from the COVID experience, but I think there is a great need in helping people express the emotional impact that it's had, and learning how to talk through some of that can help them feel more comfortable and confident as they move into the new normal. Then at this point, when we would do our powwow, whether it's on site or online, we would actually have your teams break into this, and we have done it. So when we've had a team that all was working virtually, Dana was able to move them out into their teams and have them answer those questions. So it's a great way, either from a team building or a team meeting perspective, to get everybody fully involved in that exercise. So if you'd like to have us facilitate this experience, on the next page in your handout, you'll see a program description. So if you need to take it to someone to get permission, we see that the 60 minutes dedicated can really help you learn and become stronger and smarter as a result of COVID, that POW and the WOW. While in that handout, the next page is the other program description that we're going to spend the rest of our time together. This program we were originally scheduled to do this month, but we wanted to put in that COVID piece because we thought that that would be so appropriate and timely. And you can see that this program is relevant for C-suite executives, middle managers, department heads, team leaders or project leaders, even supervisors. And we're going to use a tool. It's called the Everything Disc Work of Leaders. And another handout that was attached is a sample profile, so you can get an idea of what you would receive if you were to complete this online assessment tool. And to give us an idea, if you've been exposed to DISC or Everything DISC, if you would in the chat box, type in if you know what your style is. And this gives me an idea of if you've given any, if you've had any exposure to DISC. All right, so let's go through some of the components. On page 2 is the Comerstone Principles of this Everything DISC tool. A work of leaders focused on the tangible steps leading a group or even an organization. So whether that team is made up of 2 people or 200 people, it's the concepts that leadership has at all levels of the organization. It has a variety of factors such as your character, your life experiences, your work experiences, your cognitive abilities, as well as your maturity. That's not necessarily age related, but how comfortable or confident you feel in your role as a leader. And it uses the 4 DISC styles and identifies what you do best, as well as expose you to opportunities for improving your effectiveness. The report focuses on developing your preferred behaviors. When we did this earlier in the first hour, someone asked, is it likely that the DISC style would change in years as you change in roles and responsibilities? And I've been using DISC for almost 40 years now, and your true self doesn't change, just like your DNA. However, because the situation might change, the relationship might change, your priorities might change, you can learn to adapt. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the last is that these best practices are context specific. Your environment influences your behavior. For instance, you at work leading a team could be communicating in fashions or ways that would be different than you at home when you are leading a family. So whether you're the mother, the father, whether you have 5 kids or no kids, you might be communicating differently when at home, especially now since everybody is. And at the bottom of that page, you'll see that in Work of Leaders, we're going to explore 3 different stages: the vision, the alignment, and the execution. So from what I can tell, let's see, Haley, have you, let's see, is there a question on the use of DISC? All right, so it doesn't look like many of you have had exposure to DISC, if I'm understanding a lack of communication there. So if you have, let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you are not familiar with DISC. Oops. Right. So Work of Leaders maps out your plan for increased effectiveness by giving you a point of where you are and giving you opportunities, as I said, to develop, continue to develop your strengths and opportunities for improvement. The DISC model uses an interactive map. So on this illustration, you'll see that D stands for dominance, I stands for influence, S for steadiness, and C for conscientiousness. And on the outer rim of this circle, you'll see 8 words. Those are 8 priorities that leaders may have in leading a team: pioneering, energizing, affirming, inclusive, humble, deliberate, resolute, and commanding. Each of you, as a natural leader, have probably about 3, maybe more priorities, and your profile would illustrate that. On page 3 is the first of customized feedback. So in other words, some pages in this profile are generic. In other words, it's just basic education that you need to know about leadership, about DISC. But this page is unique to how you responded to the survey. So it reflects where you are on this map with a dot, no different than a map does. And it's interesting in looking at Denard's responses, his DISC style is a D. And the way that you can read that is that you'll see that the pie is sliced into 12 different slices. His happens to be in the D slice. If it would have been further to the left or to the right, it could have been a combination or a blend of DI or DC. The other point to understand is how close the dot is to the edge. The closer the dot is to the edge means that there's a lot of energy put into that behavior. However, closer to the center means that you can flex. In other words, you can adapt from D, I, S, or C more easily. Page 4, the dot actually tells a story. So there would be a customized narrative that you could go through, and we encourage you to put a check mark next to items or highlight words that you think really summarize your behavior spot on. If there was something that you disagreed with or you weren't sure about, you can cross off the question. But before you do that, I would encourage you to ask somebody else, because sometimes how you see yourself is different than the way you behave to others. I know that I've asked Dana for feedback, and she's very honest. We have a pretty transparent relationship. And sometimes I can think it, but I don't think I really have come across that way. And so I really think that you need to be aware of how your behavior comes across to others. Now, on page 5, as I mentioned, the priorities of a leader are explained. So with Denard being a D, he puts a lot of emphasis or energy into the commanding, along with the other on the outside, the resolute and pioneering. But you can see that he's also able to be deliberate. And then on the next page, there's some examples of how you can read the DISC style in general. So I'm going to help you guesstimate what style you might be just by asking you a couple questions. So first of all, ask yourself, are you fast-paced in making decisions or more slower-paced or moderate? If you're fast, put your pen or your finger on the top of the page. And if you're more slow or more reserved, put your point at the bottom of this page. And if you're still trying to figure out, put it at the bottom. That means you're more conservative. Now, the second question is, are you more questioning or logic focused? If so, move to the left and put your name in that quadrant. So you could either be dominance or conscientious, or are you more accepting and people focused? So another way of looking at that is it more important for you to get things done in a day? And if so, you'd be leaning towards the left side. Or is it more important for you to get along with people or interacting with others? And if so, that would imply that you would be a D, I, S, or C. So if you could or would, put in the chat box, which style do you feel you are? I tend to be a combination DI. And Dana? I believe Dana is a combination of IS. There, thank you.
I forgot to unmute myself.
Good. Combination. Anyone else want to guess? And to help you with that, in each of the quadrants are nuggets of descriptions that could maybe help you. The first piece of information is the priorities. So thank you, Amy, Teresa. All right, so we got some IS.
DC.
Teresa. Okay. So in each of the quadrants, there's some information to help you better understand yourself. The first piece of information is priorities. And we'll take a look at the I's. So under influence, you'll see that I's priority is to express enthusiasm, taking action, and encouraging collaboration. And that's really true. Dana, like COVID, one of the benefits, I think, was me being around more. I wasn't on site. So we really were able to collaborate a lot more than we normally do. I's are motivated by social recognition, group activities, friendly relationships. So hopefully you've enjoyed the interaction. They fear, however, social rejection, disapproval, loss of influence, or being ignored. So that's why I want to give you I's a chance to type in the chat or speak up. I want to jump down to S's. Let's go down, since a couple of you are also a combination of S. Let's go down and look at what S's fear, the lower right-hand corner. You'll see that they fear loss of stability, change, loss of harmony, and, if I can read correctly, offering others. No, that's not right. Offending others. Sorry, my eyes are not working today. Now think about if the majority of the workplace and the world, for that matter, are S's. How were they affected with COVID-19? Their world was rocked. You know, they like a pretty routine, stable lifestyle. And when COVID hit, they probably were quite afraid, quite angry, upset, maybe even in denial. So that's why I said that we really have to make sure that we honor their sense of insecurity in this time of great change. I'm going to stay with the S description. You'll also notice that they are very patient. They are a team player, they're calm, they're good listeners, and they're humble. And then any strength, if overutilized, could become a weakness. In other words, and let's just make sure that we, let's go back, I'm going to kind of flip around here. Let's go back up to the D's, and I can do this from my own dominant perspective. One of the things that D's do well is control. But sometimes when we feel like we're too much in control, that can cause other people to feel like we aren't concerned about their ideas or their priorities. We can be impatient. You know, some things don't happen fast enough for D's. And sometimes we can be insensitive. So if that gives you an understanding of yourself, as well as what you need to do to be aware of other people, whether it be at work or at home. Now on page, what did Haley say? Okay, definitely an IS for me. Okay, great. So the next page really does a good job of illustrating what you're going to learn in the work of leaders. There are 3 steps, as I mentioned: crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. Within each of those steps, there are 3 drivers. In other words, in order to craft a vision, you have to explore, you have to be bold, because you've got to be able to see something and explain something that's maybe never done before, or at least to the team. And you also need to be willing to test assumptions. You know, what are some of those things that you are assuming will happen if your vision becomes a reality? Then within each of those drivers are 2 behavioral continuous. That means that when you are exploring, you need to remain open to others' ideas. You know, if you're going to be just brainstorming ideas, you need to say, well, you know what do you think? You know, I'll share my ideas. I want you to share how we might achieve this vision, as well as being able to prioritize the big picture. So how does what you are currently doing be affected with what you want to do moving forward? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to give you the big picture of how this information in the rest of these pages is laid out. And feel free at any time to write in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself. I'm going to kind of focus in on the content, but I'm not, and I welcome questions. So step one is creating a vision. Vision comes when you have something articulated that can compel your team or your organization. And to kind of set the stage for this, I'm going to do a little trivia. What organization wanted to put a computer on every desk and in every home? How many of you probably have used it? Microsoft. You know, Bill Gates, that was his, oh, you gosh, Haley, you were quick on that one. All right, next one. What organization wanted to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful?
Google. Haley's hot.
Nice. Next one. Build a place where people can come to find and discover anything they might want to buy online.
Amazon.
Yes. You know, when you think about how Amazon has changed the retail, you know, the bricks and mortar, how many businesses, large organizations that have gone out of business because of Amazon. Another one, I was one of these. Bring girls out of their clustered home environments to serve in their communities and experience the open air. I'll give you a hint. You may have bought a cookie or two from them. On my honor, I will try.
Oh.
Girl Scouts of America. And the last one is, what organization wanted to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world? You nailed it. Just do it. Nike. So that's an example of organizations that were able to craft a vision, compel the organization, and ultimately do a pretty good job of achieving. So this is not just for CEOs. Leaders at all levels of the organization need to be comfortable and able to craft a vision. A project, you know, whether you're doing a home improvement project, you know, we're helping Greg's daughter and son-in-law with a deck and a garden this week and weekend. Support the organization's vision and look differently from top level vision that are equally important. Defining vision, it's an imagined future condition. It's a broader in scope than goal. So it's not necessarily a goal itself, but it gives you the big picture. It seeks to create unquestionable value. In other words, it's something that people want, serves in an unparalleled way that maybe you haven't done before, and it may actually reinvent how you do business. And so what a perfect opportunity given our COVID-19 experience. And on page 19 in the profile, it actually goes into more depth that you can learn and use to better understand vision. But I want to draw your attention now to these three key drivers. The first is exploration. On page 9 is what's called the exploration behavioral continuum. Continuum means from one end to the other. So on one end, you might be more comfortable seeking closure, and on the other end, you might be more comfortable remaining open. You'll see where the dot is for Denard. He's kind of right in the middle of this continuum. And the other driver is the prioritizing details compared to prioritizing the big picture. So he tends to err on more of the big picture. Now, the opportunity is to understand what behaviors constitutes those drivers. Know that the best practice, everyone can demonstrate either end of the continuum. However, it takes more energy the farther you are to the left. And 50% of the people have between 5 and 9 behaviors throughout this instrument on the left-hand side. and we'll talk more about those. So if you look at this page, you'll see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 different types of leadership behavior. So example, seek closure compared to remaining open. Prioritize detail compared to prioritize picture. Those are all ways in which you are providing leadership, because sometimes leadership can be very ambiguous, and we really tried to, Wiley tried to articulate what does that look like on a regular basis. So let's go deeper into this. Exploration is the first driver of crafting a vision. So if you tend to err on the side of seeking closure, that means that you make decisions and finalize plans quickly, and you prefer not to revisit options. In other words, you really are able to kind of come up with an idea and put it together fairly quickly. On the other hand, if you are open, you entertain new ideas. Maybe you get your team involved. Maybe you even ask your stakeholders, whether it's your customers, your clients. Maybe you even seek best practices from your industry. I know when Dana and I were trying to figure out how we navigate through COVID, we were involved with three specific stakeholders that we rely on. One is Wiley. So Wiley has provided us with a variety of best practices for using these tools with our clients. National Speakers Association. I've been a member and certified speaking professional, and learning how, if you're not speaking at conferences, how can you still keep your business afloat? And the third is ATD, the Association for Talent Development, and we actually participated in a virtual conference, learning, again, best practices. And then the other two behaviors, as it relates to exploration, is prioritizing details. That's when you attend to individual elements to ensure they are workable. Okay, so you kind of dot every I and cross every T, compared to prioritizing the big picture, where you focus on the broad overall view of an idea or project. If I think about that application as it relates to you guys, as we put together webinars, whether it's for our monthly webinar series or we do it for our clients, Dana and I kind of have crafted our skill sets, so we kind of stay in our lane. She does great with the production side of it, so getting all the front end, the registration, the technology working during and after on the production end. I tend to create the handouts and the PowerPoint, so that's kind of how we work our new and continued our programs. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the rest of this information is divided, so I'm not going to go into it as much detail. But the second driver is boldness, but I want to at least give you the exposure to it. The 4 behaviors of boldness include cautious compared to adventurous, hold back, or speak out. And again, depending on your responses, those behaviors would be identified. And ideally, as a leader, you want to err on the side of the right. Because as a leader, you do need to have a little bit of adventure, because you've got to take some risks. You have to be the first to come up with ideas. That's why your team needs you. You need to speak up. You're going to need to voluntarily give your ideas. And I know from working with several leadership teams with COVID, if you aren't naturally comfortable speaking up or relying on your team, you're going to need to be a little more bold with communicating with Zoom technology, or you're going to have to do one-on-ones because you can't rely on old school communication. And then the third driver of crafting a vision is testing assumptions. Here's an example. Since I spend so much time, I used to spend so much time on airplanes. Many of you may remember when the airlines thought of a way to help people communicate using phones that they provided. Well, that didn't work because people had cell phones, and why pay, because there was a cost, why pay the airlines for the use of a phone when they had their own? So that was an expensive lesson. They eventually took all of the phones out, but that's an example of how a risk was taken, but not calculated, and it was costly. And then when you test your assumptions, the way that you can do so is if you decide independently, you would offer without asking for input, seeking counsel. Like I said, you could ask your peers or your employees, your team. And when you push forward, you prioritize, you act. Many of you probably had to make some pretty quick decisions in mid-March. You know, how are you going to sustain payroll? I know that many organizations looked at either furloughs, reduction of time, reduction of pay, and maybe you didn't have the luxury of exploring implications because that was something that you just needed to do rather quickly. So in review of crafting a vision, it involves exploration, boldness, testing assumptions. Then moving on to step 2 is when you are building alignment. When you are building alignment, you're getting buy-in to the vision from those involved by asking their perspective from a task as well as an emotional perspective. And on page 12, you can read more to understand what alignment is. It's gaining that buy-in from your organization and your team. It's important because it really sets the stage to involve and engage other people to helping you make your vision a reality. Dana and I actually right shortly before COVID started our weekly chats. And because Dana, I have the hiccups now and I need to take some water, could you explain what we were doing or why we were doing those weekly chats?
Well, Michelle was on the road a lot, and so we didn't see each other face to face. And when she's in her training, she's focused on training. So we didn't have a lot of time to talk and collaborate and talk about the upcoming week and what needed to be done. And so basically we started these Friday morning chats, and that was to talk about successes or challenges from the current week or the prior week, and what needed to be done for the following week. How could I help her prepare for what she needed to do, and what did I need from her if we were preparing for a conference or presentation or something, whatever, you know, if I needed to help her with handouts. And so it was really more of a catch up. Hey, how are things going? What's on the agenda? So.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. And we even were doing those daily. It was intended to be just weekly, but during COVID, we were doing, sometimes I remember Dana doing them like at the morning and at the end of the day. You know, it's kind of whenever you feel that you need to make sure, is everybody tracking? So again, we give you that as something that you might consider with your team. And if you are doing something similar, again, feel free to chat, add in the chat box. We'd love to hear your experiences, your best practices. So when you define alignment, you are creating a step that makes your vision become a reality. It requires continual communication from top down, bottom up, and even from one department to the next. An overview of the different behaviors and the 3 drivers is on the next page. So the first of the 3 drivers is clarity. On page 13, the behaviors for clarity include offering intuition and explaining the rationale. When you communicate your intuition, you're talking more about your feelings, whereas when you're explaining the rationale, you're really explaining the why. So everybody write down on your handout, the question why is so important for kids. We're spending some time with Greg's grandson, who's just about 1.5 years. And it's amazing, he's not quite asking that question yet, but eventually you'll see and hear kids asking the why because they want to learn. You know, why do you say no? Well, I don't want you to get hurt, so that's why I'm saying no. And then the next 2 behaviors is impromptu messaging, when you tend not to invest time and energy into organizing what they have to say. You kind of just speak off the cuff, or some people might call it winging it. Whereas a structured message is more intentional. And that's when we talk about intentional leadership. You are saying and you are doing things with a desired outcome. So again, remember, the further to the right is desired. However, the further to the left is going to take energy because you might actually spend time reworking. The second driver of building alignment is dialogue. On page 14, again, the behaviors include present information or exchange perspectives. We talk about leaders needing to have synergistic meetings. How many of you have been in a meeting, and it might be a team meeting, and it starts to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher, ma, 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 ma. Well, you're just basically presenting information. You're using more one-way communication as a report out. In other words, we would encourage you to think about a synergistic dialogue where you're exchanging perspectives. And just like Dana described, you share what you did, what you're doing, but you also ask questions or you request help from others. So that's what's more synergistic. The next two is challenging. Is when you're responding with questions and skepticism to different points, compared to receptive, where you invite and appreciate different points of views, even if they are different than yours. Without judgment, you need to learn how to stop and think, you know what, that might be a better way of doing it than I. So as a leader, you need to learn how to step back. And the third driver of building alignment is inspiration. As a leader, you might naturally be more reserved than expressive. So, wherever you are in that comfort zone, you might need to really pull out some excitement, because if you've got to motivate others, you've got to pull up some excitement about a project, about something that you're wanting to roll out, because you're the motivator. You have to create that environment of inspiration, compared to being matter of fact and encouraging. So if you're more matter of fact, you're straightforward, you're kind of doing it by the book. Encouraging is inspiring others to believe in the importance of their work. I would be curious to know, for those of you who are on this webinar, how many of you were promoted to a role of leader because you were good at the job itself? And now you need to motivate others to do that job. Well, oftentimes that's a very difficult transition. It's like the airline saying to a flight attendant, you're doing such a good job of taking care of our passengers, we're going to promote you now to pilot. So the skills of a leader are much different than that of a team member. So in review, building alignment is a dynamic, ongoing process that takes clarity, dialogue, and inspiration. And you must continually do this as you monitor and realign the plan with the vision, which leads you to the last step, and that is championing execution. On page 16, there's a difference between a manager and a leader. Leadership is when you are leading a lot of people. So a lot of times when you think about your senior leadership, if you're on that senior or executive team, you might have some direct reports, but you also indirectly influence a lot of people, a lot of relationships. Whereas managers, and you might be referred to as department heads or middle managers, you are responsible for helping to follow through what the senior leadership is expecting of you, as well as leading a team. So oftentimes we think about those middle managers as being the pickle in the middle. You've got a tough job, and I would be curious to know where you are fitting in that role. So in the chat box, if you would, are you more in leadership role or are you in more of a management role? Because leaders need, and you might be a managing leader. I'm not saying that you're necessarily an either or, because a managing leader has to honor what has been put in place or what's expected of you in your job description, but you also need to be sensitive to the changing needs of your team, and that's where that leadership piece comes in. All right, so Haley says you are in management, and thank you again. Anyone else who wants to chime in, feel free to do so. So let's take a look at the three drivers of championing execution. On page 17, as we've done before, you'll see the behaviors in the continuum. Or you could be either low-key, laid back, and maybe uncomfortable, encouraging others to increase the pace, kind of more waiting for others. In fact, if you want a great book on change, I was mentioning in this powwow research I've done, is much like Ken Blanchard's book, the, gosh, it just lost me. I said 1 Minute Manager. Oh, Who Moved My Cheese? If you're familiar with that book, it's a fable that talks about 4 mice who found that one day their cheese was gone. And 2 mice named Sniff and Scurry put on their tennis shoes and quickly got up and started leaving the maze. They were bumping into walls, but they were finding new places of cheese. Whereas the other 2 mice, Hem and Haw, kind of sat around and felt sorry for themselves. And I really saw this happening during COVID. Individuals, organizations, teams had those 2 different types of experiences. So are you more driven? Are you apt to help yourself and others move quickly when you need to have that sense of urgency? And the other 2 behaviors looks at reactive and initiating. If you're reactive, you tend to take action as a result of some event or problem, unlikely to seek new opportunities. Or are you able to initiate? There's no playbook. One of my hospital clients had what they called their game room, the war room. And they had on flip charts all kinds of aspects of COVID that were affecting the people, the patients, the processes, the policies. And each day, the senior team would go in and really talk about what did we need to do, what did we do, and what do we still have to do. And that was kind of how they were initiating change in a very rapid time frame. The second driver is structure. Looking at page 18, and again, the 2 different perspectives. Are you one who improvises, figures things out as you go without much planning or preparation? Or do you tend to value having a more intentional, organized course of action, a plan of clear expectations and deadlines? The other perspective is, are you one that follows first impressions, relying on your initial feelings or your gut? Sometimes people refer to it as, or do you look at the facts, perform an examination of facts and details? We actually put out several surveys when we were asking people to register for our webinars. We were asking people to complete several questions. What was the most difficult part of working from home? What, as a manager, do you find the greatest challenge in managing your team? And what we did was we quantified that research, and that then helped us structure those new programs. And then the third driver in championing execution is that of feedback. On page 19, the 2 continuums. First, looking at maintaining harmony. Are you one who wants to have a calm, peaceful environment, tend to have not being willing to confront people about problems or conflict? Or are you comfortable knowing that conflict is critical and that you can use it as a way of resolving in a productive manner? Are you one who offers less praise or more praise? In other words, looking at your role in giving feedback as a leader, recognizing that no one is perfect. You've got to obviously recognize the things that they're doing well, because people like to know when they're doing a good job. But how many of you also want to know if you're not doing a good job? So that's where, as a leader, you need to feel comfortable confronting problems or unmet expectations. So in summary, the championing execution is the way in which you turn your vision into reality using momentum, structure, and feedback. And it's something that leaders at all levels must demonstrate commitment and support. So in order for you to increase your effectiveness, it does take, first of all, an awareness. And that's why we like to use these assessments, because no one argues with their data. Learning what your strengths are and to further capitalize and use those strengths, but learn what are your opportunities or challenges to improve. So the last few pages in the profile helps you. move forward. So on page 20 are the strengths, and again, this will be customized based on your assessment. You can go through and identify, what do you agree with? What do you find to be the examples of those in place? So again, the further the dot is to the right are your strengths. And then on pages 21 through 23, each page is dedicated to an opportunity or a challenge. So again, further to the left. And again, it gives you some tips for improvement, and it even gives a case study where you can start to understand how what you as a leader may have done that could be changed to be more effective. And then write out your own action plan. So it's really a nice self-paced, self-contained tool that you can use. So if you are interested in completing an assessment, go out to our website, inspiringsolutions.com. You can search everything DISC, Work of Leaders, or I just this morning just searched for Work of Leaders. It's $120, and because of COVID and you participating in this webinar today, I'm willing to schedule a 1-hour complimentary debriefing with you. So Dana can arrange that with you. Let us know. We'd love to help you. So in closing, leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough ahead to motivate them. So we hope today that we have given you a sense of connection with us in this virtual world that we live in, but also giving you enough inspiration to improve your effectiveness as a leader. The third page, or third handout that Dana sent to you was our schedule of upcoming webinars. We're still looking at doing the 30 minutes at the top of the hour, 9, 10, and 11 Central Time. We encourage you to share this with others, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's your family members. Don't watch alone. You can go out and register on our website. And to preview our upcoming webinars next month, we're going to have Todd McDonald, a longtime friend and colleague from ATW, present Learning to be a Situational Leader based on Ken Blanchard's book. August 21st, I'm going to present How to Stay Positive in This Changing World That We Live In based on my book, Attitude, the Choice is Yours. And then in September, we've asked guest presenters Kim Gratney and Cindy Cool from Seek Full Circle to present Business Relationships Transformed. And the other opportunity that we have is to take advantage of Wiley's Showcase. On July 13th and August 13th from 11 to 12, they are going to do a showcase of a brand new Everything DISC assessment called Agile EQ. It's phenomenal. We feel that Agile is the new mindset or emotional intelligence that's going to help organizations thrive in our new world. So by signing up, and there's the our link on our website there, you will have a chance to experience this assessment as well as participate in the showcase. So if you've got any questions, please ask. Your feedback matters. Like we said earlier, as you close out of the webinar, you'll be asked to complete maybe a 5-question webinar that gives us feedback, as well as offer suggestions, because we need to work on the rest of our 2020 schedule. So in closing, I want to thank Dana for helping me to look good. I couldn't do it without her. And we both thank you for tuning in and making this a priority today. Have a great weekend, and please stay home and stay healthy. Make it a great day for yourself and others.